Hello, everybody. I hope you're having a beautiful day. I just wanted to keep this short and sweet because a lot of YouTubers are about advertising and getting a whole lot of random words in while they can to vex viewers and put a lot of phrases in between to try to confuse people until they finally give an answer at the end of their video for their view count. But I'm going to be proving some obvious fallacies in the Bible real quick. And anything that I say, you all can look up and go start to research on your own accord. So, at the very beginning of the Bible, it says, you will leave your parents' home and cleave into a woman and to eat of the tree of life and not of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. But the thing is, if you were told not to eat of good and evil and have no concept of good and evil, then even giving a commandment is man's fallacy. That doesn't make sense. Which means if ever he did eat the tree of good and evil, he had no recollection of this. And so there were already commandments given while being told to just live your life, which makes no sense, obviously. So, second fallacy. Um, God creates man, then seeks to destroy all man, but shows mercy on one man because of his virtue, which basically proves that he didn't see the future in terms of how mankind would act. And the only way that any of that could be described in the days of Noah is if he was ultimately doing that to teach us a lesson, wiping out the rest of humanity so that one man could start over. Okay, third fallacy. Noah, in this day and age that we live in now, would be considered evil because he cursed his son. Now, I said that to say this. The whole idea of the tree of knowledge of good and evil is a fallacy because ultimately it's true. You're going to get into a vortex of reasoning and arguments versus ideas and theories about whether something is true or not, or whether something is good or bad. And it's a waste of time. There's no point. So, another one, real quick. I've changed my name to Yehanan. I did that for a specific reason. So when I ventured throughout the internet, not one person asked me if my name was Hebrew or Jewish. Everybody that I came into contact with asked me if my name was African or if it was Ethiopian. Now, I started to do research and looked into the Ethiopian language. Ethiopia is basically the country connecting the strait that leads into Arabia/Yemen. If you look into a lot of these Arabic cultures and these people that were trying to escape Africa or Egypt, they have African roots. And so the thing is, I think Europe is trying to usurp history, so to speak. I think what they're trying to do is make it seem as if people of color were like jungle people while they were like the successors. Because if you go into history, the Africans and the Middle Eastern and the Indian and Chinese, or Asian, should I say, are the forefathers of history and science and language, farming, all that stuff. So, you know, there's just so many different fallacies in that book. And like, there's another one. Perfect love casts out fear, and fear is no love, for fear causes torment, right? So no fear. But the entire premise of the entire teaching is that if you don't do it correctly, or if you don't bow to the Lord or accept him as your Lord, you're going to be punished eternally. So it's another fallacy. You can't you can't tell people, actually you can do whatever you want, I suppose. So it's just another fallacy I wanted to point out. Um, I mean, you guys, if you take off the blinders and actually think, because here's another fallacy. The Lord wants you, it's a choice. He wants you to choose. It's up to you. But you guys are forcing people through spiritual torment and fear to join along. And so basically, it's no longer a choice. It's just basically fear. I think if a lot of us were talked to by the voice of reason, we wouldn't accept it because we're so used to punishments that we can't understand something being merciful to us all the time, trying to talk to us constantly. We would shut that voice out for fear of maybe forsaking what we have created to be a God. So, sorry, your brother's got to eat. I mean, I welcome people to come into my comments, and I like to talk to people about things, but you guys, I've been doing a lot of research in another fallacy, and then God said, let us make man in our image, because in the original text, it was Elohim. Elohim is plural for multiple gods or multiple entities. Ashura was the mother goddess. And even Yahweh, which is I am who I am, basically, which would be the same spirit or breath since the ancient times. Yahweh was supposedly birthed from El. I'm trying to get you guys to understand this stuff. Like some of the people that are in the church now are products of people that have changed up a lot of text stories and lores from a long time ago. I'll give you an example. Christianity was a long process. That is where it's at today. But what I'm saying is one of the forefront runners for Christianity was Greece, the Grecian Empire. And that's why a lot of times I'll say Greece has 4 heads for a huge effect. They took over Egypt. They changed the Library of Egypt's name. They split Asia and all that area into 4 different nations. Once the leader died, I think his name is Alexander. I call him Alexander the Greek or whatever. So, you know what I mean? All that is basically to say, I'll give you an example. If after you're done watching this video or whatever, you look up the Greek flag, right? Go look up the Greek flag and then look up the Israeli flag. You'll notice the similarities. Well, see, the thing is, Greece had the Torah translated into Greek with using Jewish scholars. Predominantly, I guess they would be Persian or Babylonian, whatever you call them, because it's a whole timeline and progression. If you're looking at the actual history of the matter, that area was predominantly Mesopotamia. So a lot of those biblical stories have to do with like their actual names in history. I think they're called the Hebrews or something like that, which they're translated now. They had a name, but they're translated now to Hebrews. You had the Canaanites, the Akkadians, I believe the Babylonians, the Sumerians. There was like a whole bunch of nations that became a bigger nation. It's kind of like the United States, but only in terms of it being a bunch of nations united into a bigger nation. So all those people basically had a religion or a lore, and it was usurped and or taken over by other empires each time. So, for example, you would have, at the beginning, you would have Egypt, Mesopotamia, and a couple of these other areas in the surrounding area. Okay, so if you guys would look at this from a revelation standpoint, you could say the dragon would be Pharaoh, and then the 7 enemy states that were against these holy people. And to be even honest, they were, in history, they were not monotheistic. That didn't really come around until later in history. They had multiple gods. And so that's why you look at a lot of these different scriptures. It says, let us in our. You see what I mean? They changed the text up a lot. You're looking at the Greek Empire. They sent a lot of representatives to different states. They sent a lot of philosophers and different people to Egypt and different places and began learning the cultures of different places. I brought up in another video, Persia was one of the people that had control over the whole area for a while. You're looking at a time frame from Egypt and Mesopotamia. Then you're looking at like, if you look at this in another time frame, you would have Babylon, Persia, Greece, and Rome. If you give Greece 4 heads, that's 7. So then you look at that in an aspect that they each had control of the empire and each wrote their own Bible. So you have the Babylonian Talmud, you have the Persian Torah, which was comprised of Ezekiel, a lot of scholars are saying. Then you would have the Greek Empire, which then had the Greek Bible. What they did was they had names for gods and whatnot. And so you're looking at a situation where his name was, I believe, Theos in the Greek Bible. So you're looking at people that change a bunch of the language, a bunch of the wording, and then you have Rome come in after that and conquer Greece, and then eventually you have the Latin Bible, which then you have those 4 nations all comprised together to create this Judeo-Christian religion, right? And then afterwards, you have these Romans go up towards the north, further up in Europe, and they start Anglicizing, or they begin, mercenaries are beginning to, at this point, convert a lot of the Germanic pagans. And so then you have Christianity appear in the form that it is, not exactly in the form that it is today, but it's coming along. Because there was, even if you look at the languages, there was no J in the languages back then. That's an English word, English, Anglo-Saxon, Germanic pagans, and Slavic people, and Celtic and Baltic. And so then you're looking at Roman, right? They had Leosis, right? So then that is more closely translated when you get down the line to Joshua, because it is God is salvation. So then you go back again, once again, to Greece. So like I said, look up the Greek flag and the Israeli flag. They are almost exactly similar. It is basically, you're looking at a group of European people that then mixed into it and created a religion out of it. Just like how you had Persia come in and do their thing, and Babylon come and do their thing, and all these other different nations. It's a time frame. And so, I brought all that up to say this. You're looking at people that are translating stuff a million times, and then they're arguing, even though the translation of their book says, do not eat of good and evil, but eat of the tree of life. You see what I'm saying? So in my mind, every commandment after eat of the tree of life is basically from a man, is it not? But then those men will say they were speaking to God. But even in that same text in the beginning, if you really pay attention to the beginning, all those men were evil, every single one of them. They were all evil according to man, because man's logic was to always go to evil. If you really pay attention to Cain and Abel, the point of that story was the dude that was following God was slaughtered by the world, his brother, because he was, if God is only good in all his good aspects, and then the other side of that is only bad, then what is the good going to do when the bad comes? He doesn't switch back and forth, so he got slaughtered. It's like a concept. And so a lot of different fallacies in that stuff. You know what I mean? Leviticus was kicked out of their blessing, a whole nation, because of their crimes and murder. But then you're telling me, and because they dealt too harshly with the nation. But then you're telling me Paul, who was just murdering all these people, is sanctified to spread the word, even though Solomon and David are not, after they had people murdered and became pagans, right? It's all rhetoric. Paul was really, they say he was a Jewish man, but he was really a Gentile. He was like a Roman or a Grecian at that point. And to take one even further, that's basically like if Paul went from being Uncle Ruckus to now he's like, oh, I'm down. And now he's the one teaching people. That's basically what happened. I'm trying to get you all to understand. So historically, they call it Josephus and the Antiquity of the Jews. I listened to some of the audiobook of the dude's book. It's basically just the Bible. It's like no matter how much research you do, you're just going to go back to that book over and over again, I guess. So I'm doing all this for a reason. I'm basically saying Don't be trapped in a cage. Use your mind, think, and take what you need to live and survive. Because, or else, you're going to create a spirit. And when you do so, it is going to cause a lot of problems in your life if you do it unrighteously. There is a scripture that says, on the scroll, every man who swears falsely on the scroll will be succumbed to his own curse. And the scripture is about Babylon being carried to a place and put in a house. I, what I honestly will tell you, I went from believing all that stuff as a child to breaking away as much as I can. And the irony is, the more unreal I make it, the more real it becomes in another sense. It's strange. It's like, you read the prophets now and some of these wise philosophical words, and it makes sense when you look at society and what's happening. So, you know, people ask me, what do I believe? What am I? What this and that? What, blah, 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 blah. What? And I simply say, I am who I am. And that's who I am. And that's all I can be. So, if you guys want to leave any, I know some of you will probably leave 15 paragraphs and tell me to explain this and that and all this other stuff. And I will be happy to tarry with you as long as I possibly can.